well. They require less water, which I know we're all really concerned about water these days, and they don't require any fertilizer. In fact, a lot of times, I mean, some people will fertilize their flowers, but with natives, a lot of times that'll kind of send them tanking. So if you use fertilizer, use really weak solutions of it. And then they're less prone to diseases, and they're more tolerant of what I put in parentheses pests, because a lot of those things we might consider pests really actually might be important to the plant's life cycle. Like I gave my parents a passion flower vine as a present once, and I came back to visit, and they had sprayed their plant because there was all these caterpillars on it. And it was like all fritillary, and so I felt so bad. It was my fault for not specifying, and also, hey, maybe you don't want this in a showy place, right? Maybe just put that back in the garden, not on the porch. So they do know now. So the fritillaries came back, the plant is still okay, caterpillars seem to be doing good. And then it provides critical habitat for pollinators, beneficial insects, other wildlife. So basically, the whole ecosystem, right? So pollinators can provide for insects, hummingbirds, but then also things that eat insects and birds, right? So you can get insects eating robins and stuff like that. I've seen a lot of robins around lately. And then, stuff that likes to eat birds, like other hawks or foxes, stuff like that. Without pollinators, we don't eat. So a huge amount of our food comes from pollinators, and they're heavily declining these days. So the more we can plant and help along our habitat with our rapid urbanization that's happening, it seems like at breakneck speed since COVID even, right? Just development everywhere, the better. And then they improve soil health, prevent erosion, and improve water quality, all of which are great things, right? Also, I think Keith kind of mentioned it, but if anybody has any questions during the presentation, please feel free to raise your hand and ask a question. And then this is another really good why. It's just gorgeous, right? I mean, is there anybody in here that drives by a field of wildflowers and they're just disgusted? Terrible. So, beautiful to look at. That really helps too. And so we'll come to the what. So what do you want to plant? So you got to just consider your goal. What are you trying to attract? What are you trying to do? And so do you want just annual wildflowers like bluebonnets and paintbrushes? Do you want some perennials in there? Do you want some native grasses? Or do you want a combination of those? So I have a little piece of land, it's maybe almost an acre in Zorn, and it was a cattle field. This is all Bermuda grass. It's a huge battle that I'm fighting right now with that Bermuda grass. But I'm trying to do prairie restoration and a native food forest for myself. So I really like ethnobotany and I really like eating. So things that I can eat like Mexican plum trees and stuff like that. And then a part of my area is going to be a prairie. And so I'm just kind of taking it in chunks. But I want all of those things, and one of the things that I really noticed during the snowpocalypse was how important those grasses were to the bird. So we were having freezing temperatures. It was horrible. I lost my electricity for 5 days. But I was super worried about the birds, so I was heating water, my propane stove, put in the bird bath, feeding them seeds, and noticed them going into my bunch grasses, like my big muley and little blue stem and Gulf muley grasses, and they were keeping warm in there. And I also noticed those thawed faster, the ice covering over them seemed to thaw out faster. So that was important. Another really big important thing is, what is your budget? to get into the flower and stuff like that. So there's a Be Happy mix, there's a butterfly retreat mix. Of course, butterflies need something that they can land on, like Texas lantana is a really good one that has little flowers they can land on, and then also put their little proboscis in there to drink the nectar. And then there's a hummingbird mix too. And there's several other mixes, grasses and stuff. So these are really, really easy if you don't want to have to do a whole lot of homework on your own or buy a whole bunch. So these are called detox. And these are, I think, good for about 300 square feet. And then this is a pound. So this one is black-gum prairie, so it has a mix of wildflowers, perennials, grasses, all kinds of stuff in it. So at the end, I'm going to have a little contest of 3 people will win one of these packs of those mixes. So another thing to do is observe what's growing in your area, right? So things that are naturally growing in your area are naturally going to do good, right? So kind of keep an eye out what's growing well there. Another thing I love to do, I'm a member of a team called Team Flora in San Marcos. We're the San Marcos Free Belt Alliance, and we go out and collect seeds and spread them throughout the natural areas in San Marcos. And so ethically collecting is a big deal, right? So you don't want to go to a plant, take all of the seeds off of it, and then take them away. And you certainly don't want to do that in somebody's yard that you haven't asked if you can collect those seeds from. So making sure you have permission to be there, permission to do that, and then just taking about, no more than a third of the seeds off of a plant at one time. And if there's several plants, just a few from each plant is the best way to do it. If there's one plant of that kind growing in that whole area, I wouldn't collect any seeds off of it. Just make sure you're not doing the plant to not propagate itself. And then doing your research, what you're looking for, especially if you're buying seeds from one of these companies, calling them and asking them. They'll give you free advice because they want you to buy your seeds from them. And then most of the wildflowers, most of the stuff that we're familiar with, does really well pretty much everywhere in Texas. So you're going to, like the ladybird legacy, those are going to do well in clay soils, also limestone soils. So where to get them and where to plant them. Where to get them, so my favorite is Native American seeds. That's who I've used throughout my career. So for all those restoration projects that I've done, we've used them for seed and for some of the labor as well. The thing I like about them is they're very ethical. They don't sell any invasive species. They don't sell Bermuda grass. They don't sell caribou stem, which makes me really happy. And then they do a lot of giving back to the community with these grants and stuff. Wild Seed Farms is another good one. Oh, and Native American Seeds. So they're based on a junction, but they now have a warehouse off North Creek Road and I-35 in San Marcos or New Braunfels. And so you can order your seeds from them now and get them like the next day. You can pick them up there. If you go to their site to order, you just put "will pick up" in the box. They're going to charge you shipping initially, but when they actually process your order, it will be minus the shipping. And then you just go there and pick it up. Like, they won't send you a confirmation, like, your seed's ready. So if you're from Seguin, you want to call and just make sure it's ready before you drive there, or email them. But it's been a very easy process. It used to be you had to go to a junction, pick it up, or have it shipped, and it took a really long time. And then there's another. It's at York Creek and I-35, Native American Seed. And that's the catalog that you guys have. Yeah. And then Douglas King Seeds is another one, and that one's in San Antonio. They're good. They have a lot of natives, but they do sell like a lot of pasture grasses and stuff too. And then the other thing is take a walk and collect seeds. They're free. And
the Wild Seed Farms, you kind of skipped that. Is that the one in Fredericksburg?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, Wild Seed Farms in Fredericksburg. Again, they're very ethical. They have, tons of different natives. They have a lot of these different mixes. They're really good. I've seen them do programs at places. They're really great. Highly recommend them as well. And then Douglas King, and then take a walk and look for seeds. There's a lot of stuff right now that has seeds on it. I don't think these have seeds on them right now, but I collected these fairly recently. Our Grassus penstemon. So just kind of looking at don't want something that's gonna just hold water all the time, unless you're, planting some major water loving plants. I put size 400 square feet minimum. That's really more for like if you're going for a meadow. Honestly, if you do 1 square feet, that's great. Like anything helps, right? Anything helps our native wildlife and pollinators. But when you do plant, a lot of times when you're doing this stuff to make a bigger impact, you want to plant densely. You want to have a lot in one area. So aiming for 400 square feet is great. You want an available water source, just in case, right? Maybe we don't get rain for a year. You have to water it a little bit. Consider the present state. So if there's a ton of weeds, Bermuda grass there, it's probably not the time to plant this year. You're going to need to spend a lot of time removing that, figuring out how to remove that, and wait until a bunch of weeds start popping up. But also, you don't want to plant somewhere that nothing's growing either, because there's a reason that nothing's growing there, right? And then you want to plant away from pesticides and herbicides, because a lot of these things are attracting pollinators, and, of course, herbicides hurt, so you don't want to do that. I actually had to chase a guy away. He wasn't happy with me in San Marcos yesterday, because I just tagged him on off of Greg's Blue Mist flower in front of our building, and he came along with this pesticide can to spray, and I was like,
What?
I saw him outside my window. I'm like, no! I ran out there. I felt kind of bad for him because I panicked a little bit, but I was like, hey, we're a pollinator garden. I would appreciate if you didn't spray right now, especially. And he was pretty nice about it, but and the city's been nice. I was a little worried I might get in trouble. They were okay with it too, but it's like, yeah, this time of year, and really most of the places I worked, I kind of put it into that. I'd rather have the bugs around than having dead birds and stuff. So,
We got a hand here.
oh yeah.
So I have a question. If it's compacted, it's tilling at the beginning, like when you till it down and plant it earlier, or is it too?
So basically, you don't really want to till more than an inch deep,
Okay.
because then you're going to stimulate more weed growth. So I would say if it's really compacted, probably wait. And there's some stuff you could plant in the spring, but you might, if there's stuff growing there right now and you think that you might have a good chance with just tilling it an inch, I would probably spread like a thin layer of compost on it or something. Usually if you put compost, it'll kind of break it down. Then I'll talk a little bit in a few minutes about solarization and some options for that. But I do a lot of that. It's really helped my yard. Sheet mulching, like with cardboard, because it seems like it gathers moisture and it sort of makes the soil start getting broken up a little bit softer. I mean, right now, nothing's moist really, but when we have a little bit normal rain. So most of these annuals, you need to spread out the seed September to November. Some people will say you can do it until December. October is the prime time. Usually in October though, we also have a little bit of rain coming, and it's not looking great for that either. There might be some chances next week, but I usually try to watch the weather, watch for when there's going to be a few days of rain beforehand whenever I plant pretty much anything. They're going to sprout in the fall and winter, they're going to bloom in the spring, and they're going to die back in the spring and summer. And then you can collect seeds. So sure you guys know, most of the times, most seeds don't germinate, but that's because they're not in the optimum condition. So if you collect them and you spread them out, how we're going to talk about each year, then you're just going to continue to add to your bounty of wildflowers. Perennials, of course, aren't my favorite because they come back every year. A little bit less work. And a lot of them, though, take a couple of years to bloom. You can plant them spring or fall. I prefer to plant pretty much anything in the fall, just because they're going to establish their roots. You don't have to water them as much. It's nicer weather for planting. Many reasons. But they seem to do a lot better, and they come back way earlier in the spring when we have pollinators coming through. A lot of our other stuff, if you're buying it, isn't really ready until after birds are already migrating through and monarchs have already gone through. Of course, I lived several years, and some of them will keep their leaves year-round if we don't have the snow. And then you can collect seeds from are so easy to propagate. Like, you know, there's a ton of them along that stalk. So grabbing those seeds, and then what I like about it is there's always something happening. So you either have a stalk of flowers and a little bit of vegetation, or a seed stalk. You always have that really pretty little clump of vegetation at the bottom. It's so pretty.
Nikki?
Yeah.
So when do you grab the seeds? I mean, is it right before they pop, or like bluebonnets pop? Aren't you?
Yeah, you'd want to,
When do
so
you-
bluebonnets you really want to watch, because they kind of twirl and pop. So I would get it right before they pop, because once they pop, and they're a lot harder to find. So those I would collect early. Like the standing cypress, they stay in the little seed thing for a really long time, so you have a little bit of leeway for that. Mist flowers, you want to wait until they're kind of dry, you know, you don't really see any color on those petals. So it kind of differs with each plant. But the ones that burst, I would get right when they get hard, and then let them sit for a little bit. So native grasses, which is one of my favorite things to talk about, but I'll keep it short. Best time to plant them is late spring, and they germinate at soil temperatures greater than 65 degrees. Most of them bloom in fall, and they have such pretty flowers, in my opinion. And then you can collect a lot of seeds from grasses, and you get a lot of bang for your buck. So if you're gonna honestly propagate a wildflower, I would highly recommend grasses, because you just get like a seed tray, put seed starter in there, get your grasses, kind of spread it all over the seeds all over the top, very lightly covered in soil, and they'll pop up. Like inland sea oak, super easy, muley grass, switchgrass, all these great prairie grasses. And prairies, of course, are basically an endangered ecosystem in Texas. We've had so much development. They're going away, and they're really important for flood control, pollinators, all that kind of good stuff. And then avoid mowing them. So a lot of these native grasses can't really stand being mowed. There is some, like buffalo grass and blue grama, that you can mow. You really don't have to, because those stay a lot shorter. So you might mow them a couple of times a year. And then they're really great food and habitat for a lot of creatures.
Question, what about buffalo grass mowing?
Yeah, so you can mow it. I mean, it usually doesn't get much taller than about that, but I've had some at places I've worked, and we mow it like once or twice a year if it's in a place where we have people like having traffic over it and we needed to mow it. So how much do you need? So large scale projects, Native American recommends 10 pounds per acre, which is 43,560 square feet. I had to look that up. Small scale, about 20 seeds per square foot. So, you know, in each of those packets that I gave out, there's about a tablespoon in there, and I would guess there's probably like 100 seeds in there, maybe more, because there's some really tiny seeds. They're tiny. So really a little bit goes a long way, but the denser the better, really, because they're going to outcompete the weeds that way. And then one of my favorite things to talk about is how diversity leads to stability. So the more different kinds of things you have, the more chance you're going to have of things surviving. If you just plant one thing and some kind of life comes along that affects bluebonnets projects. Basically, we would shred our whole field. I mean, we also like had to go in and chainsaw and lop all the shrubby stuff out first. Then we go and shred it. A lot of times we had prescribed burns. There's some areas we couldn't do that. And then we would just leave it and watch the weeds come back. And then we put an herbicide. And then we do kind of the same thing, shred it back down again, and then watch the weeds come up. And we might actually hit it again if a bunch of weeds came up. Then we let it sit for a while, and then we plant it. So for large scale, if you have a lot of weeds, that might be an answer. But another answer is solarization. Also, if you're not in a rain, solarization is another answer. So you can do that with clear or black plastic. So the projects that I've done, we use black plastic, but it seems like they're moving more towards clear plastic because it just gets hotter and fries the stuff more. At first, they thought that that might help the plants more because it's kind of like a greenhouse effect, but it's just so covered. They're not really getting any oxygen, and they're just like in Texas sun, right? They're just getting fried. So there was a project at Purgatory Creek Natural Area in San Marcos where we did some prairie restoration and we did solarization. Those we used everywhere, right? Because they're getting them from ravines or wherever they're, people's yards and stuff. But burning is great. Burning is seriously the first thing that I would do if I have a choice is burn. Yeah, for sure. And then, so what's manageable to you? You don't want to do, 2 acres if you don't have a lot of time on your hands. But if you want to just start, start with a small area, see how you like it, see how much work it's going to entail, and then move on. Like one of my bosses says, baby steps, baby steps. And then till the soil only to the depth of 1 inch when you're preparing it to avoid weeds, because there's a lot of dormant weed seeds and stuff like that deeper. So you only want to till to about 1 inch. And then how do you spread the seeds? So you can broadcast on a small scale just with your hands. Or there's like these little hand sprayers they sell at Lowe's, Home Depot. They're kind of like a little shaker. So those are good. Large scale would be something like this. So there's a natural area in San Marcos called, oh, I thought it went off. you don't pull them thinking they're weeds. But you do want to keep on top of the weeds, right? And then water. So there's two ways you can do it. You can water or you can not water, right? But if you water, you got to keep watering. So I, like in those restoration projects where in big natural areas, we couldn't water, right? So we just try to time it during the times of the year that are going to have the most rainfall. This year would not have been a good year, luckily. We didn't do it, well, we did some projects in San Marcos, but we did see some stuff come up because we were pretty lucky and we did seed right before we had some rain in the spring, like that really early rain we had for some, I guess that was fall. We had some cover crops, and then we did a bunch of other cool season annuals. But then you want to, if you're watering, you want to water it lightly and frequently. So you don't want to like saturate it. Like a lot of us, when we're watering our potted plants and stuff, we want to water it really deeply and less frequently. But with this, you're going to water frequently and lightly because those seeds are tiny. They're not really germinated yet. They don't have deep root systems. So if you smother it with water, you're just going to you're going to kill it, like basically suffocate it. And then once they start germinating, about 4 to 6 weeks-ish, you can cut right back on your watering. And then if you don't water, you might not have, I don't know what I wrote there, the fast of germination. A lot of germination, but you're going to have a lot less work to do. So I kind of tend towards, it depends on where it is. Like if it's in my yard and I really want to make sure that, I have stuff come up, then I'm going to water it. But if it's in a big field, pasture behind my house, I'm just going to wait until nature takes its course because a lot of these seeds are going to stay viable for quite a few years. So if you don't get good rainfall now, I mean, Mother Nature does it on her own all the time, right? Without help from us, and usually a lot better. So I kind of like to let that take its course. And all those places that I've worked, all those prairies have looked really well after a few years, but it's going to take about 2 or 3 years, which is kind of normal even when you're planting something, right? For the plant to really take off its 3rd year. All right, and so some resources that I have. Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center is my favorite thing to look at. If you're looking for native plants, you want to make sure it's native. You want to make sure what kind of soil it's going to do well in. You go to wildflower.org. They do actually have some like northern Mexico plants and stuff like that included, which a lot of people recommend planting stuff for that zone as well because of climate change. Our seasons are kind of changing, our climate's changing, and some of those things are doing well here, whereas some of the stuff that used to do well here isn't doing as well. And then Native American seed is my favorite, so seedsource.com, and a lot of this information came from Native American Seed and Wild Seed Farms in terms of what the best way to do it is because they're the ones that taught us how to do it for all these projects that I planned. And then me. So I'm always happy to answer questions. If you need to try to figure out where to get some of these plants, there are resources like National Wildlife Federation Plant Finder, Audubon Plants for Birds that tell you where to find native plants, but it's not easy. It's kind of a bummer. Like I went on to the Wildlife Federation Plant Finder, and there were several species of plants that we definitely don't have around here that came up when I put in my zip code. So just kind of doing your research and being sure before you kind of take a week to buy a bunch of that thing. There used to be Guadalupe Gardens native plant nursery that closed down. They were a regional native plant place to buy actual native plants. But there's supposedly one opening in Converse called Poly Natives. I think it was supposed to open this fall, but I haven't heard if it's opened yet. But they do have a Facebook page and stuff. I just found out about that one like at a NIPSOT meeting at National Plant Society of Texas. It's another great resource for your area. They also have lists of regional natives on their website. And then, and yeah, we sell natives at the Discovery Center. And then if you have, if you're like working on a restoration project or something like that, you need grasses, just give me a call because a lot of times we'll have stuff like that that we can donate. So just let me know. about the same amount of time you need it to be there, and then it just decomposes, and you have something to do with your cardboard. And then it just kind of breaks up the soil underneath it. So, maybe sheet mulching, putting in rocks, I know it kind of looks ugly for a while. You can also cover it with a little layer of compost and mulch, and that'll help too. And then just try it next fall, or do some spring perennials or something. You can also do plugs, so you can propagate this stuff and plant it in spring. A lot of it is not a lot of it, but some of it's gonna take specific things, like bluebonnets you're gonna have to stratify and scarify to be able to have them come up next year, or this spring. But if you go to Wildflower Center, and then there's this really great book that's out of print and kind of expensive called How to Plant or Propagate Native Plants of Texas and the Southwest. I'm probably butchering that title, but Jill Noakes is the author, and it's the one with the maroon cover. It's like $80 to $150 for a copy. But again, if you just email me, I can look in the book for you and take a picture and send you the page. But it's really the kind of Bible of Texas native plant propagation. But Wildflower Center, those are the two sources I always go to look before I even try to plant a seed if I haven't planted before. Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions for me? I have several kinds of flower beds. I have flower beds. We used to have roses, but we don't have roses anymore. But they also have bulbs in them. I don't want to get rid of the bulbs. I have another flower bed that has different plants that I've planted in, but it could stand more plants. Is there something different? So I can't go and not like a solid flat with nothing there. I want my bulbs. I just want to add to it. Just what? Do you just kind of tilling around?
Yeah, I mean, you can till around it. It kind of depends on what you're looking for aesthetically. I would say, I would probably recommend some perennials there, like maybe some Mealy Blue Sage and some Turk's Cap, stuff like
Some
that.
places I have a little bit of that, but I want more. I want some newer stuff.
More stuff, yeah. Is it sunny? Is it in a sunny location?
One has a lot of time, but not all.
Okay, well, actually, so Native American Seed, I think they have a shade mix, like a shade flower mix that you can get. So that might be something to look at, and even if you don't buy the mix, go look at what's in it, right? And then I would recommend some perennials if it's gonna be in a bed, because it's gonna be more fertile soil. So I think those would be better than the wildflowers.
Just kind of go by hand and kind of.
Yeah, just kind of.
Keep the ones I want to keep.
And if it's if it's a bed, it's probably loose soil anyway, so you probably don't really even need to till the soil. I would just spread the seeds and then just put a light layer of soil over top of it. Yeah, compost is great, but also if you see wildflowers, they're in really disturbed, usually really not fertile areas. So they don't need a lot unless there's some issue like compaction and it's like nothing will grow there. You probably don't need a lot of it. And I know it's hard for me to grasp but I want to help it, but it seems like really the less you try to help it, kind of the better, the more natural environment you can create, the better for those wildflowers. Perennials, some of them do well with care and some of them don't. So this year, everything's pretty much taken care of because, like my goldenrod is such a sad year because I have a ton of it coming up, and then just a bunch of it died. I still have some, but probably a quarter of what I would normally have. So you can offer water, but it's just a big balancing act of water conservation, right, and wanting the flowers. So that's why I really think seed collection is important. And you can put it out in a good year. So this year, I'm going to make extra effort to collect the seeds in my yard because there weren't as many, and make sure I try to really propagate next year.
Can we talk about shredding a little bit? So for those of us who have acreage, at the Poly Mansion, we got 20 acres, but and it's a big debate with my brother, who's this naturalist, and he never wants to shred because even though mom wants them to shred, because it looks, you know, mosquitoes start popping up, weed stash, you gotta get rid of them. So we're always in an argument about when to shred. I mean, what's your advice on that? You know, obviously the plant's gonna, you know, the bluebonnet's gonna be dead or whatever.
Right, right.
Is there, is there a good time to shred?
That's a great question. So one thing that I didn't address in here that I should have is when to, if you are gonna cut down your, cut your yard, when to do that. So you really wanna do it usually late April, although this year was really late. So definitely watch your stuff, make sure it's completely gone to seed before you mow it. And then shredding, there's like, we used to have buffalo, right? We used to have buffalo in this area, and they were really essential to our ecosystem in those prairies. And then we had cattle after we put all the buffalo that were moving through and not just staying in one place, and that was essential. And so there are a lot of places that bring in grazers, once every couple of years, sometimes even once a year to kind of get their property back down to a certain level. They'll actually, scoop out those seeds and stuff too. And then there was a place called Armor Bio Nature Center, and they did a big prairie restoration project. And they have a real strict mowing regime there, so they do mow, like, I think once every few years or something. So that might be something to look at. Like the stuff that we've done, we shredded that first year. If we get woody stuff coming back in, we either burn it again, or we go in and, depending on how much, cut and treat. But it's kind of what you can manage, So I think you don't want it to be covered in mesquite, right? If you're trying to go for a prairie and your option is shredding, when you start seeing a bunch of that stuff come up, that's what I do. But that stuff's going to keep coming up because it's woody and it's stubborn. So I would recommend asking your agriculture agent, extension agent, what would be a good herbicide for mesquite. I know there's some mesquite specific ones, and there's been a lot of research on mesquite herbicide. And then the best way to do it, in my opinion, all the herbicide treatments that I do with invasive trees are not that mesquite's invasive, right? It's native, but it can be aggressive. Is to cut and treat it. So basically, you cut it, you get like a squirt bottle that you can close the lid on. So you cut the stump, and then just pour a little bit of poison, squirt a little bit of poison on the cut part, so that it doesn't get into the soil or anything around it. And usually it works like a charm.
Well, we tried, and I hope nobody squirms at this when we tell you what we put on them. But people like to do diesel and remedy. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
And I bet some of these old timers know that diesel and remedy. But as soon as we cut, we spray right away because you want that poison to go right into the heart of that root.
And that's another consideration is when the plant is putting its energy into its roots. Like unfortunately for like Chinaberry, the best time to treat it is like the middle of summer. When you really don't want to be traipsing around. Like in Government Canyon, it's like 110 and you're going out chainsawing and treating, but that's when it's putting its energy not into its berries, but into the soil. So if you're treating it when it's putting out leaves or fruits, it's putting all its energy up into the trees, you're going to have less success. If you're doing it when it's putting its energy into its roots, then it's going to take the poison into its roots and have more success pulling the tree.
I have a question about the poison. If you put like remedy or whatever, how long does it stay in the soil after you treat it? I mean, does it ever become numb?
It does. So there's different ones have different shelf kind of active life. So you just look on the label to find what you're looking for.
Oh, no, we see, we had, I didn't even count. We had 40, on sign up, we had 40, almost 46. Well, people, no, they're signing outside the line.
Okay, I think I'm just gonna have to do this really random, because I don't think my idea is gonna work.
How does she want to do it?
Okay, so who in here, does anybody have a birthday on Halloween? Anybody have a birthday close to Halloween?
43.
Do you like bees, hummingbirds, or butterflies? Alright, I'm just, I know you guys can lie about this, but I trust you. Who can tell me a type of butterfly that, that's easy. Okay, who can tell me how long monarch super generation lives? And you
Oh,
can raise your hand
gosh.
for this one. Oh,
5 years.
5 years. That's a long time.
Did you?
3 months is close, but not quite it. Anybody else?
Did you cover that in your presentation?
I did not.
Okay, because I
This
missed
is
it.
a trick question. 6 months, I'm going to give it to you.
Oh,
So
can't
most butterflies live, do you want butterfly or bee? Okay. Oh, bee. Okay. So the monarch super generation, the one that's coming through right now, some of these started all the way in Canada. This generation actually will fly all the way to Mexico, spend the entire winter there, come back here in the spring. And in Texas, we're the most important place because then they come to Texas, lay their egg on milkweed and die. And then they have the shorter generations that make their way back up north. But that one generation is like a super butterfly, it stays alive for a really long time. The eastern coast is different, and the western coast, like California, they do migrate some of them to Mexico, but I don't know a lot about the eastern population. Just 'cause I don't live there.
5 years.
They do it different. I don't think they don't go to Mexico. Yeah, and I don't know if they go down to the Keys or where they go. Do you? Sorry. Okay, so we got a good butterfly. Can anyone tell me? Wait, does anybody know what kind of hummingbird just came through for migration in the most numbers? Yeah.
Well, then,
No, what type of hummingbird?
Ruby throat.
Yeah.
All right. I think that does it. We're going to sign off here.